They turned out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hello there, Tim. Hi, Ryan. And hello to all of you who may be listening. This is another episode, yet another episode of Dismembering Horror.
Technically, they are listening.
Yes.
Because they're listening.
And hopefully they still are. To this new episode, brand spanking new of Dismembering Horror, where we are continuing our delve, our dive into J-horror.
Deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Yeah, we've agreed on four J-horrors in succession. So, and we split that up with last week's Strangers Pray at Night. And we got one older one we're looking at next time. Yeah, we had to clean our J-horror palette of going to see. Oh my god, it was so bad.
I regret that.
Yeah, me too. Well, we gave them
So we got
money.
one more after this.
Yeah, one more.
But what'd we do this week?
This week, well, we got all. Can you hear my hair? It's related. we got into some J-horror hair horror this week.
Oh man,
I'm a fan of this filmmaker's the film we watched this week from well, I haven't. He's known for being a prolific filmmaker, actually.
Oh really?
And very sort of like hit or miss. He's like one of those just kind of like knocks him out and to varying results. But actually,
I can see that.
right. The one among those though was actually one that I had recommended because it's like one of my top favorite movies of all time, called Love Exposure.
Yeah,
which
was the 50-hour-long movie.
Yes,
Yeah,
4-hour-long Japanese love story. And it came out, I think this film that we watched for this week is the one that came out right before that one, so it was interesting to see the context for me.
For you?
Yeah.
This is just interesting, period, for me, to watch this movie.
Sion Sono is the filmmaker we're talking about, and what's the film that we're talking about that we were going to talk about today, Tim?
The film is Exte, Hair Extensions.
私たちをどうしようっていうのよ。
聞いてくださいよ、セニョリータ。
これは怖いです。見たことないです。美しい髪を持つ美容師の卵。死体置き場で働く髪フェチ男。
綺麗な髪の方いらっしゃいますか？
綺麗な髪だね。幼き少女を巻き込んで恐怖の世界に突入する。
And boy, oh boy, I know I tend to not take the duties on coming up with a summary.
Oh
unless
no,
something should strike me. But it's because like I always,
all you.
Yeah, no, because it's like I can just see your brain always going, Tim, like just trying to like in your soul, just trying to make sense of when we watch these kind of out there Japanese ones, like when we watched Tetsuo the Iron Man.
Oh man.
Or like when we watch a bad one and you're just like, how do I even? So with this one, I think, how do you even?
Wait, I have to do it?
Yes.
Oh, God damn it. I tried last night actually to do it when I went out and met up with some friends, and I found myself going down this like, I'm just telling them the movie. Right? It's not even a summary. I'm just like, and then this happened, and then this. I was like, shit. So, okay. I could probably do this. Here we go. When two police officers discover what do you call those things? A shipping container that smells, filled with human hair, they also discover a body. And the story of Exte is the story of shit of the
Well, it's with the body. So.
Yeah, it's the ramifications of what happened to that body in life and the I guess sort of curse of that affects two people essentially. God, this sucks. This is the worst summary ever. Let me start over. Okay. Exte Hair Extensions is the story of a... No, man.
Well, it's hard.
This is hard.
Because we can choose, like, the three perspectives. Do we choose, like, the main girl, the crazed guy, the hair fetishist, or from the point of view of the body, the dead person?
Right. Man. This is... Okay. Exte Hair Extensions is the story of a budding hairstylist and her family drama, and when a hair fetishist gets a hold of a body in the morgue that he works at, antics ensue. The end.
Hair antics. It's. I mean, it's not really. And then antics ensue, and then they're mistaken identity. And people. No, it's.
I don't know. It's how do you
horror?
Horror.
Ensues.
Yeah. How do you explain the hair taking on sort of a life of its own because of this curse?
Yeah.
Because, I mean. I'm not even sure where. I guess since we're still summarizing, like, where do you how do you explain the motive of the hair? Jesus Christ!
You're just listening to that
this movie,
that very question.
Yeah, this movie
as a phrase
just destroyed my brain.
Well, the motive of the hair.
The hair. It's so. This movie's super twisted in a lot of ways that I love, but there is sort of a thematic. There's a few thematic things going on that. I don't know, that seem to be unrelated to each other. And so it's hard for me to like pull together like a concise way of describing what is going on. Mm-hmm. But I guess in the most simple terms, it's like, I still feel like I'm just telling the plot. You know what I mean?
Well, I think we should move on because this is traditionally a short segment.
That was horrible.
But
that's my worst one ever.
Well, also the intention of this is we aren't just reading it off of IMDb. This is you, and hopefully you've seen the film too with us. So this is just some context of where our heads are at and trying to figure this out. And I'm sure you listening have a good one at the tip of your tongue. You wish you could scream at us, but yay, that is not how this works. So how would you rate this film in our rating system?
Ooh, well, I think that I would just say, is it worth renting for me? Yes, I'd rent it. It's so weird, but it's cool, but freaky as fuck. Yeah, I'd say rent it.
I mean,
I wouldn't buy it. I mean, I don't want to watch this movie again. And I'll explain why. It's actually because of the things that I have in things that worked for me. I don't want to see some of this stuff again for a while.
Hey, well, that's a
good sign.
That's
right?
a really good thing, because remember, that's our mission here.
Yeah.
Our personal mission was you want to seek what scares you.
Yeah.
And I'm glad if we could dig up maybe not some gold, a little silver at least.
Yeah.
What
about you?
I was definitely like, this is a hearty rent for me, but there is a moment at the end where I went from really liking it
I know
to
exactly
loving
what you're talking about.
I'm not one to give visceral reactions like Tim does, but there was a moment in this where I had to clap and yell at the ending, which we'll get to in the next section. But that made it borderline want to own. But I think kind of like what I said about the Grudge movies, like if I found like the films of Sion and Sono cheap box set at like Amoeba or something,
Yeah.
it'd be cool to have them on my shelf. But like at the same time, I don't feel like immediately I need to see this again, or it's a place I need to go to often.
Yeah. Well, and I think what one of the things we're finding with our little trip into J-horror is that they're really intense. I mean, like, if for nothing else, like they sort of sit with you for a while, which is pretty amazing and awesome that's kind of a characteristic, or maybe we're just getting lucky with the ones that we're watching because we're pulling really, I don't know if they're well known, but they're well received.
We're grabbing them from like top whatever lists,
Yeah.
And this one is a hearty rent for me. I think is what I settled on.
Yeah, I get that. Hearty rent / box set.
Yeah. Official ratings here. Well, let's talk about things that worked for us.
Yeah.
What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
Well, you bring up what you had just brought up, the intensity of these J-horror films.
Yeah, man.
And this filmmaker, which I want to touch on in different ways, but I think one thing that really worked for me was, the character story wise, the intensity in this one had to do with like a child abuse.
Oh,
there's no like subtle way to put it.
Yes, and it's really, really heavy, and like there were times when I was like, this is hard to watch.
Yeah, like,
and not in a bad way, but I mean, I just was like, it's weighing on you that we're diving into this subject matter in a film where, like, at times you're flipping from something so serious and so kind of like upsetting with the abuse stuff, and then jumping over to Yamazaki, the hair fetishist, and he's a goofball.
So absurd.
Right, and it's jarring, but I almost think necessarily jarring.
Yeah, well, this is things that worked. What worked for me about that is like, it was a good example of how maybe it's like it almost sounds like a cheap method, but this is just kind of the filmmaker of like just using these techniques of like, by putting us at that heavy level, we're going to view the context of as ridiculous as everything else gets. We are already from a heavy heart place. You know, it's sort of like by stretching you open at all a certain amount, it just helps everything else squeeze through. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. There's sort of it's interesting. It's almost like getting into this super heavy stuff and then seeing absurdity. To me, it almost made the absurdity less absurd in a weird way. It's like, it was like because I think for me, a lot of the time, when you start to tip into camp and like slapsticky stuff, I'm not generally a big fan of that. It depends on the context, I guess, obviously, because there's like Evil Dead stuff that is really slapsticky that I love. But as a general rule, I'm not super big on that. But given this construct, I'm almost, it's like I'm happy that I'm getting that, because it's like, oh, thank God, I get a little like levity and a little relief from something super heavy. And it almost makes me appreciate and pay more attention kind of to the lighter, goofier moments, because I'm in need of it. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting device to take you from such far ends of a spectrum and ping pong you back and forth, because and we talked about this in a different way about Tetsuo. Tetsuo doesn't give you an opportunity to sort of check out, right? And I think this is doing a similar thing in that by the time you're going, oh man, like this content is kind of weighing on me, it's pretty well timed to jump into the other end of the spectrum, and give you this totally different, almost a different movie, where it's suddenly hair is growing everywhere and it's like fucking crazy. And
You have the hair fetishist singing about hair and like
yeah.
riding around on a tricycle
Yeah.
with his guitar.
So I think that's a really good lesson in kind of knowing how to ping pong your audience around, especially in horror, because you want people to be kind of off their pins.
What
so
I
to
think
speak.
maybe helps it work, why it doesn't feel in poor taste like the Strangers movies, which we talked about, is you see like as like bizarre and whatever however we're describing like the hair fetishists and the sillier aspects as silly as they get, you can tell the filmmaker like looks at both extremes with equal gravitas. You know what I mean? Like he may be bemused by this guy, but he also like fully believes him, and it doesn't really. So it sort of crosses that line into truth is stranger than fiction. Like I do buy this.
Right.
As much as my initial reaction is to laugh, like as soon as I start thinking about it, I'm like, this guy.
He's twisted.
You'd see him around in real life.
Right. No, I thought the same thing. I remember thinking, like, in a way, and maybe this is because of the heaviness of the Yuko's story, the absurdity and this insanity and the sort of craziness of Yamazaki, the hair fetishist. Am I saying that right?
Yamazaki.
Yeah, that's right. I still thought of him as a human. Right. And I think that's carrying over from looking at the other storyline that is so deeply human, and then going to even this guy who is acting goofy and weird and whatever. I'm still like, yeah, that guy is mentally troubled.
Well,
and so it gives him more weight, like you're saying.
Yeah.
There's more gravitas to even when he is being goofy and funny and absurd. I'm anchored by the reality of the other storyline, and that I think plays into each other, where you don't just go, oh, he's just a clown.
Yeah, well,
and that's pretty awesome.
Those scenes where like he visited and interacted with the hairstylists.
You're right.
It helped ground that because you could see how sort of insecure he was, but at the same time trying to work through those insecurities of just like having to be in a room full of people selling his hair.
Yeah,
He's
and how they
like,
react to him, plays off of that.
Yeah.
Where they're like, what the fuck is
and
this?
he knows that too,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he's trying to so hard to just like be respectful and play into social norms.
Yeah. Yep. And he can't do it, which
Yeah.
is great, right? Like I think the key moment is when he calls her a bitch, and he's like, I mean a woman. And it's like, holy shit, like he's deranged.
Yeah.
Like in the worst way. And you kind of see it in this moment where he doesn't have, and not that we didn't think this, but like he doesn't have this sort of impulse control. Like he's so in his whatever, like craziness world or obsession,
and
that
not,
he he's chomping at the bit all the time.
not to get too off topic, but how much do you think, and I guess we could put it in the context of this film, but how much do you think that is a repercussion of a society that doesn't allow his strangeness,
Sure. No, I think there's a lot to, I mean, not that I know, I'm not well versed in Japanese culture at all, so you can maybe
I'm
inform
not
me a little bit better.
I've just been
But right, but I got the feeling that some of the larger subtextual themes are like, what does it mean to try and improve your aesthetic and to be a good person, and like what does that mean within the context of this culture, and the shame or the guilt around that potentially, which I think was again in Tetsuo and in Juan we see a lot of that sort of shame and guilt thematic stuff going on. So there's certainly overarching themes, right?
You just say that word shame, and I think of like stoic Japanese culture. He shamed my family.
Really? Oh,
I
yeah.
am shamed.
Yeah. Sure.
The deep
That's right.
bow.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that seems to be a pretty critical part of the culture.
Yeah, which reminds me, what was that line at the beginning that we both laughed at? Was like, you shouldn't be disrespectful for someone just because they're a weirdo. Or it was like,
because they're creepy. Just because they're creepy.
Yeah.
You shouldn't judge them just because they're creepy. And we're like,
I mean, that was
I'm
great.
with you.
It's like,
But also, how do you not?
it seemed more phrasal there in Japanese
Right.
versus like here, American, maybe take note a bit more as like, oh, why, of course we judge.
Right.
But it's like, I don't know, there it seems like it's such maybe a more predominantly, they're all aware of it being just under the surface, where here we are quick to be like, oh, that's weird.
Well, and I mean, that sort of speaks to the idea of like covering up your demons, so to speak, like the things that you don't want the world to see. And I think there's actually a lot of that in this movie. Obviously with the sister who's just the worst person, right? Like, what was her name? Do you remember?
The sister? No, I just remember we were looking for it.
I don't know if she had a name. So but the sister who's abusing her kid, Mommy, the kid's name is Mommy, which confused me a little bit a couple times. And I was like, anyway, doesn't matter. So, but this sort of like covering up and taking responsibility for shit, like she's the example, the sister is the example of somebody who's just said, I don't give a fuck what society thinks. Like, so far as like, I'll beat my kid up in front of people. I'll,
Steal your things.
Yeah. She has complete disregard for that. And on the flip side, you have Yuko, who's trying really hard to keep up appearances, and she presents herself in that way. And even the sort of talking her life, like narrating her life thing, is almost an example of like, let's keep the sort of facade and the cheeriness of life outward. Like she's literally expressing the good things that are happening in her life, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a beautiful day and I'm riding my bike through this town, and she's, so to be so, I thought this was very odd at first, but now after watching the entire film, you kind of go, oh, there is sort of some deeper levels to why you even have a character who's doing that. Like, that's representative of how that character views the world, and in deep contrast to kind of what I would consider the real bad guy of the movie, which is the sister. And I guess you could argue the merits of the hair fetishist being the bad guy for sure, but
he just seems so much, he was just like being him.
Yeah.
And there was
so, this covering the sort of the culture around covering the warts, so to speak, is played upon in this, and I think in a good way. And it speaks also to the larger sense of like, when depending on how bad the somebody has been wronged, with the actual, do we ever get a name for the body?
I don't know, I forget.
I don't think so. But she it was implied that it was sort of a sex trafficking thing, right? But it was like organ, like she's had her organs removed.
I think she was wrong because she had her organs taken or something.
Yeah. So whatever that crime is, I guess it's stealing people's organs and killing them. You're getting a, that's such a deep wrong to have happened to somebody that the powers that be, whatever that is, can't help but seek out some sort of retribution, I guess.
The mysterious powers.
Yeah. So I don't know why.
The ghostly, the supernatural.
I guess I wonder whether or not having it be hair is there a deeper meaning to that? I guess the only one I can think of is that when we take pride in our appearance, and we value people a lot of the time, and the hair fetishist is sort of the extreme example of this, where he's like literally filming people looking, he's like, do you have good hair, do you have good hair, do you have good hair?
Well, okay, I want to keep moving down the list, and I can segue.
Cool.
I think in a way I'm excited about here for what you just brought up, how first you said sort of the idea of like the covering warts is like a societal thing, or picking up on in the story, but then how you're just saying how there's a different kind of appreciation for appearance and aesthetics as well, where it's sort of this question of like, well, what's just covering warts, quote unquote, and what is just enjoying something beautiful or appreciating something beautiful or wanting to be beautiful just for what that is,
Right.
without the context of as if it's saying something else is bad. Like, can't one say this is good without it inherently meaning the expense is, because what that does is that instantly puts makes a dichotomy exist of saying
Right.
if something's good, then that has to be bad. So
Right.
that means there's warts to cover. So like, I thought that was, I liked the scene you reminded me about, or you reminded me about the scene where she gives that speech to the kid about like why she got into hairstyling. And it sort of is like a flashback. And she says she used to watch her mom get her hair cut.
Right.
And she thought it was the most incredible thing to see someone be transformed.
That's right, yeah.
And to see sort of like a different appearance take place that just sort of, and that you could tell by the way she was talking about it, she was just sort of in awe of a certain kind of beauty of her mother,
Right.
of her world at large. So is that... And hearing her, tell that story about her, kid self, what inspired her just so sweetly, it's hard to make her feel like, it's something reprehensible to think of it and as if she's, wanting to cover warts.
Right. Well, yeah.
But I like that speech a lot in that section.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're towing a really fine line between, in a way, interestingly, I think the use of literally hair extensions. So if you pick this apart a little bit, I just punched my mic. If you pick this apart a little bit, you can cut your own hair, right? Or, I mean, you can have somebody cut your hair. It's your hair, right? And you can, in the pure, let's just say, quote unquote, in the pure form of that, the hairstylist cuts your hair, but it's you. They're transforming you. Like she admired her mom's ability to do that. When you're adding a thing, the extension, it's like a foreign object, right? You're almost, I could see it being taken as that you're almost sort of taking it one step too far, in that you're no longer using sort of the natural parts of you. You're taking something else and adding to that, and that can be considered the line between what would you call this? The line between shit.
Like what's real and not real in appearance, you mean?
Yeah, I don't mean real. I mean sort of what's okay and then what's too much.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're crossing a line into almost like, not arrogance, but wow, my brain.
Well, you're on quite the train.
Yeah. So, but I think I'm sort of getting my point across, that the hair extension is one step too far. And in the weird way of like, now you're being oh my God.
Well, I think
I'm having a brain melt.
No, I think
now.
the horror that I hear what you're saying though. I think like the horror that plays on that though is like if someone has hair extensions and you see them for the first time, you don't question it if they're that's real as far as you know it. And so I don't know. I'm trying to connect that to like the horror that comes from the idea that hair can exist in such proportions in this story and like doesn't have rules or bounds as to how it like exists and what it can come out of. It sort of it breaks that sort of like, oh, the hair extensions are fake and that's her real hair, and so this is her real beauty and this is her construct beauty. It sort of in its own way breaks down that line. You see what I'm saying? Does that make any sense to anyone?
Yeah, have we derailed ourselves completely? Well, so I think having said all of that, let's sort of get into a little bit more of the specifics of what's working with the hair.
Yes.
So, and in horror. So, this is a horror podcast. So for me, I hate hair. Like, generally speaking, Like, hair on your head, great, no problem. But hair that is in places that it doesn't really belong, like basically anywhere other than your head and your eyebrows, and I guess facial hair, but like, let's say from the neck down, I'm really, just personally, I don't like hair. Like spindly, weird hair, or like patches of hair, or like whatever. And this takes that into my personal nightmare realm. There is hair. I don't want to look at your chest hair. So this takes it into the worst case scenario for me, because even on me, like, I don't like when I realize, because you get older and hair grows in weird places, and you go, what the fuck, dude? Like, why is there hair growing there? Like on your fucking shoulders, or like on the back of your fucking tricep,
Well,
or
it
whatever.
kind of like
it's like for me. I don't like it.
This connects the dots from like just hair growing on your body to like that fear of when you watch those like those Planet Earth BBC documentaries of like fungus growing out of something, or like hairy fungus.
It is that is exactly it. Like that, the visceralness of like things that feel like they don't belong there is really intense for me, and hair specifically like keys in on that for me. But this is the thing. I love body horror. Like, I'm not talking about like torture porn. I like body horror. I like metamorphosis shit. The Fly. Like, that shit is so viscerally like upsetting to me, but makes me excited. And I'm like, there was a moment in this movie where I literally covered my eyes. Like, I had to put my hands over my eyes, and I'm obviously looking through my fingers because I'm not going to look away. But I like had that. I was like, I have the impulse where I'm like, I need to put my fucking hands up, because this girl is pulling a fucking hair out of her eyeball and it keeps coming. And that is, to me, like the greatest fucking body horror type of shit. Like, I love that so much.
Yeah.
It's so upsetting to me, but it's like gleefully upsetting.
And then it upped the stakes when if it coming out of her eye wasn't enough, then they would come literally out of the eyeball, poking out.
I know.
Out of the
like,
eyeballs.
Just hair in places like on your tongue, and like coming out of your fucking cheeks, and just that under the fingernails, like under the skin. The hair under the skin is so disgusting of a concept to me, that like their ability to show that, it didn't matter that there was sort of a little I think limitation maybe on the special effect at times. You could kind of see the special effect. I did not care. It was still fucking great. And so skin crawling like made me want to just jump out of the room. But that, to me, that's what you want with this type of movie. You want to be sent down that path, because
what else are we doing here?
Right. Like, why else would you put this movie on if you're not getting that? I'd be really disappointed if I didn't get that out of this movie.
And it had a pretty good progression too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, of extremes, and exactly like a good mix of how hair would kind of mess with people. Like, I loved when she was hung by her hair and it was stretching out her scalp.
Yep.
And all that.
Yeah, and like so that's a good example where I didn't mind that you sort of are like, yeah, you can kind of see the CGI in that. I didn't care.
The idea was too strong.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, that's awesome that that's happening. You know what I mean? Like, if your idea trumps the whatever sort of lacking you have in the visual. I mean, it's not even lacking in the visual, but in the execution, I guess, the visual execution, because the visual itself of her hanging from those, multiple strands of hair was awesome. So it just didn't matter that it was a little CG or whatever, like visible.
Right.
It's too strong for that to matter. But so yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Well,
hair. This really touches a nerve for me. I mean, I literally, if I could, the claw game in like arcades where you try to grab a stuffed animal or whatever. If there was a claw game that could grab my head and lift me up and dip me into a vat of Nair, and pull me out and I'd have no hair from my neck down, I'd be cool with that. Like, give me that machine. But
then the thing is,
hair.
then it'd grow back fuller and in more spots than before.
Fuck.
And hopefully not in fast real time though, like this film.
Yeah.
We were talking about, how evil the mom and her boyfriend were. Which, to connect to like the horror we were just talking about, the hair horror, like at a certain point when I was just feeling gross from just what they were doing and how much I hated them, I realized, oh wait, this is a horror movie. They're gonna get their comeuppance. And
big time.
They did. I loved that. That paid off, seeing them get that comeuppance. And it was cool because it was from the perspective of the girl in the closet for a lot of it. So it was kind of just like, oh man, it's so intense what's going on out there. It let your imagination play in a little bit, but then also like slam them against the window.
Yeah.
And
I think they did a really smart thing because, in a way, the way that scene is depicted is really helpful for us, the audience, that's feeling the weight of, such a serious issue as abuse. In that, by putting the camera in the sort of little cubby hole that the girl has been put in, and having the action of those deaths happen outside of that where she can't really see it, we're effectively in a place where we're protecting that kid. Do you know what I mean? Like, the filmmaker is protecting that kid for us. And I think that's important. Like, we needed that. Like, imagine that you do that scene where the kid is in the middle of the room and you're seeing all of that and you know that the kid is seeing all of that. It's too upsetting.
That kid's had enough abuse.
That's right. So in this weird way, we get in the catharsis of that, the abusers being killed, we're also getting some protection for the kid from those deaths, which is important for that kid, that character.
It also
and
just amped up the suspense of like,
totally,
of like, the raptors in the kitchen. Are they going to see us?
Yeah. But I think on both sides, it's servicing the story and it's servicing the audience and, in a way, servicing the character all at once. And that's good. I mean, that's really well done decision making.
Yeah.
And, it's still scary for her and for us, but I think it was an important choice to make to protect her in that moment.
Yeah. I just want to get down a list here of, I almost wanted to put this in things of note as far as things that felt like the filmmaker's Sion Sono staples almost. I've just seen,
cool.
He has tons of films and I've only seen like, 2.5 other ones, but
sure,
there's plenty to pick up on in those.
But
yeah, so some staples of his, I was going to put them in things of note, but I'm like, no, these all worked for me. So
cool.
I'll put them here. So like the frenetic shooting and editing style, like you remember, like even just the montage at the beginning, when she's just going around town on the bike, you'll have like, just like a 1.5 second shot here. Boom, 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 coming at you. Everything's very like handheld. It's like they're just in there fucking cranking this stuff out. So that was some staple. And then what worked for me too, which I recognize from his other films, is repeated musical refrains of like classical music or recognizable tunes. Right. So in this one, it was that classical guitar piece. Very soothing when she's going around. They came back to that a few times. And they also have a Christmas tune.
Yeah, it was... What is it?
Was it Silent Night?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And then I mean we already over extinguished about the putting extreme heavy stuff next to silly crazy out there stuff, but that is also very much
that's a thing.
Wheelhouse.
That's cool.
Like Suicide Club was another one of his, which is really? Like
nice.
Kids committing suicide.
Jesus. I would say, just going down a sort of a quick list of moments, obviously all of the hair stuff I loved. The sort of the final fight which I think we'll get to probably your favorite moment of this. But in the final fight, there's a tongue grab that comes out of nowhere. The Yuko grabs the fetishist's tongue.
That was your biggest reaction.
Shit, I lost my mind. It was so unexpected to me. Like, I could see them doing it where she just grabs his tongue and yanks him down, but they went a step further and they made a prosthetic, like, elastic tongue that she pulls on, and it stretches unnaturally, and I fucking loved that so much.
Tim went, oh! I like jumped up out of his couch. It was so amazing.
Yeah, I had been lounging back for most of this movie, like, pretty much almost laying, prone, and that happened. I popped up so fast, was on the edge of my seat. It was so good.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
And that led into, I think, one other thing, the design of Yamazaki's, like, apartment or whatever.
I have that too as things
so
that worked for me.
Awesome. It's very in contrast to a lot of the other. The rest of the movie kind of lives in reality. Like, it's shot very realistically, and the design is realistic. It's a place. It's a apartment and a hair shop and all.
No,
that.
this had his little hovel, his like Christmas piece hovel had
Yes.
like. It was really well lit and shot.
Yes.
It had a mood to it and an atmosphere.
And even putting the woman's body in this hammock so that the hair can droop over it as it grows, like all of that design stuff was awesome.
It was like a twisted seaside Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of too, where you just had a sense of all his little like TVs and things around.
I really love that. But that gets us to
no wait that
more?
gets us that also gets us to something I liked and appreciated with his character was how like this does feel like the Japanese thing where it's like when you just see like their commercials and stuff, we just always go, oh, that's so weird, that's crazy or whatever. So when they do, but that's their normal. So when they do something that's like weird, creepy, crazy, anything that's extra normal description like that, which this character was, the hair fetishist. Mm-hmm. Like, I just love that you can't even, our instinct is to like figure it out, quote unquote, or to like know what it is. Like, oh yeah, this is this kind of weirdo. Sure. This is this kind of misanthrope. But no, it's so beyond that you just have to throw up your hands and just be like, okay.
Yeah.
And I love that because people just so much, they like need to know and figure out. So to just have a character that you can't do that with is very, very enjoyable.
Like the first time we see him sort of out of his work gear and in just like life gear, he's wearing a wig and a hat and like an American flag shirt.
And peace signs and hearts.
Yeah. And I just, it's like, huh, that's weird. And then you see him again and he's got a different wig on and you're just like, okay, sure. Okay. I'm just going to go with it because that's who this guy is.
Hair fetishes with
not going to worry about
also, like, is into Christmas. Okay. Like, I can get, okay, he has wigs. And okay, I kind of get that. Okay, yeah. Then he's a fan of, and he has a tricycle he rides around on. He plays guitar. He has an American fetishism, too. He has a hippie fetishism. It's just like, great. You just can't have to throw your hands up. So, well, he certainly got his comeuppance,
which
as well
is what Ryan is referring to as his sort of pinnacle moment. And I agree, this is an amazing moment.
This is why we watch these films, folks. So if you haven't seen this, we hope you've been enjoying us and along for the ride, and that you've seen this. But the moment we're talking about is when the trichophile, which is the word for hair fetishist, when he gets his, I keep saying the word comeuppance. So first, so it's the grudge, of the hair, the curse of the hair exacting its final satisfactory revenge on him, and it cuts him up into a few
pieces.
Like the head, somewhere in the middle, somewhere legs, but in such a way where it tears away like instantaneous, quickly enough, large enough portions that those existing parts collapse into himself.
Yeah.
So he resembles a gnome almost.
Yeah, it's sort of like
a Mr. Potato Head gnome
Yes.
of like his coat, his hair, his face, his actual person too has fallen on top of each other in pieces, stacked on. Thank you.
Yeah,
And if that wasn't enough, and his tongue's hanging out.
that's right.
And that was beautiful. That was so exciting. Oh my God. It's a great kill. But then he is still alive.
Yeah.
He takes a few steps in this form, tongue hanging out with his feet. Bloop, bloop, bloop.
Like a little Muppet.
It was one of the best things I've ever seen.
Oh man, it was hilariously good.
Yeah. I'm like, this is it just reinstilled my love for everything, Tim.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Watch this film just for that.
Yeah.
If you haven't, but I hope you've seen it, as is tradition here on Dismembering Horror. We hope you're watching the film with us.
Yeah.
Only one last little thing, and things that worked for me was just wanted to talk about more is like you talked about at the beginning when she's speaking to camera on the bicycle and setting up the story, and just sort of it's like blanket obvious exposition,
Right.
That which is your instinct is like, oh, that's blanket obvious exposition, shouldn't be working, and it worked for like the reasons you were saying earlier, which was how did you put it, like,
well, it's sort of her we're getting a character, development that she views the world a certain way, right?
So, but it was cool. What also worked how it also worked. It was sort of a continuation of her and the roommate talking to each other, where they were like playing.
Yeah.
They were like acting like they were in a theater show knowingly, and just saying like, this is who I am. This is how many months I've been working this job. I come from here, da da da. And you're just like almost want to cringe at just like the sheer exposition of it. But another Sion Sono staple, this was in my list of things, is just, he doesn't care. This is what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's so just like knocking these films out and just doing what he wants to do, that like, it just works. It shows, it demonstrates how confidence in filmmaking goes a long, long way.
Yeah. You can't undercut yourself. You gotta, if you're gonna, especially making a movie like this, and I assume a lot of his other stuff is in the same vein of just, this is how you do it, right? Like, this is the thing I'm making. I'm not gonna worry about fucking anything. I'm gonna make my thing,
And he doesn't.
and that's great.
Cool. Let's
Every
move on.
artist should prescribe to that.
Yes.
Or ascribe to that, whichever it is.
All right.
Fucking, this is how it goes. Live by that.
That's true. Good. Things that didn't work for us.
Yeah, I think we should move into it. I think we could go on and on with things
Exactly.
that did, but let's move into it.
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
All right. What do you have?
Not much. I got a little kind of, I think the pacing at times kind of dragged out a little bit for me, but then like we were saying, you do get popped back into the flip side of things, and you'll jump to the hair fetishist and kind of get pulled out of it. But there's a lot of time spent with Yuko and the kid and that whole situation that I wondered at times if you couldn't have condensed it a little bit. And then I thought, well, I don't know if you would want to. Maybe it's playing to the proper effect, but that's kind of it for me. It just, there were moments where I was like,
we're on the exact same page, because I was like struggling to figure out why I just didn't love this movie, why it's a rent and not a buy for me. And that was the first thing my mind went to, was like pacing. Like at times I just felt like maybe I wasn't in it as much, but I remembered enjoying watching it all. So yeah, like what you said, I thought maybe cut some of this, cut some of that, but I couldn't figure it out. So maybe we could kind of figure it out. Well, what our hesitation is.
I think one of the things that I noticed was there's very little narrative thread to hold on to in regards to the connection between the A story and the B story, right? Like whichever one you want to
we knew they were going to collide, but
it took a long time for them to collide. And so we're really kind of just living in these two stories separate to each other for a lot of the movie. And I think that might be what was kind of causing it to feel like it's dragging out, is because, you know, in a different type of movie, you're kind of getting overlapping. You're with somebody, and then it's like meanwhile, but then the meanwhile connects back to the A story, and you sort of can follow the trajectory of those two stories in a comfortable way and know that you're leading to something. This, I did not at any point really know where we were going.
Right. So yeah, because I could see that maybe because when you have the family drama stuff going on, the girl coming over asking if she can stay there, maybe it's kind of just like, oh well okay, like this is
right,
because it was well done, but it was maybe nothing special, like it's just as a drama piece. So
well, and they're literally, these two stories are literally disconnected from each other. They have nothing to do with each other. They only overlap insofar as that the hair fetishist drops off extensions to her shop.
And she is a hairstylist, so we know that it's
but
somehow
outside of that, there's no like deeper connection. There's no connection for her and the woman who the body that the hair is growing out of.
So if that was done stronger somehow, maybe
I'm not even sure if it this is a fine line for me, because you don't want everything to just be fate, right? Like, I think that trope that it all has meaning and it all is because of a higher purpose can get you in trouble,
right?
At
Like,
times.
I thought when she was giving the fantasy of her memory of telling about watching her mother get her hair cut, it talked about, they didn't show the guy cutting the hair for the long time. I thought it was going to be the twist, and it was going to be the hair fetishist or something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's sort of it. Like, I love twists, and I love things being interconnected, and a lot of the stuff that I write, I lean into that. But I think you can get in trouble, and it's not always necessary. This movie, I don't know if it would have benefited from having a sort of connected through line thread that helps. Yeah, no, it would have been helps things mean something or make sense. I just don't think it necessarily needs it.
Well, maybe this was just that puts it more in line of just being a horror yarn that wouldn't benefit for those things. In which case, I would say, yeah, find a way maybe to make it 10 minutes shorter.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, actually. Shaving about 10 minutes may have solved that completely.
But I hope that, I mean, that's the only thing I didn't have and things that didn't work was this trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Speaks pretty strongly.
I have one other thing. Man, I didn't...
Was it your cobweb continuity?
Oh, yes.
Get it out of the way.
I have one cobweb continuity. It's so lame. But when the hair fetishist comes in, I think it's when he's selling, or not selling, but he's giving them the hair extensions. He's got a little hat on, and it's sort of shaped like a Smurf hat, where the lump is in the front. You know what I mean? It's
what?
So from one shot to the next, the lump goes from being in the front to being in the back, and I just thought it was amusing. It didn't bother me. I just noticed it. Don't look at me that way. I know I'm learning that it's more and more irrelevant. But I'm just saying, I noticed it.
I have a good amount of things of note. Can we move to that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
We had already kind of alluded to this, but I thought definitely noteworthy. And this is from the Wikipedia summary. For some context, Yamazaki explains that after her organs were harvested, the girl's hair continued to grow, carrying on her grudge against society. And then blah, 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 blah. After, the main bad dude hair fetishist dies, her grudge is satisfied. So I got to connect it to The Grudge, Ju-on, of course. That's just more of of ill things leaving some sort of mark. And
well, I remember while we were watching this, having this thought. I'm like, this is, we're seeing this theme in these J-horror movies, but pretty much the same thing is used in Western horror, but it's almost always very specifically to the ghost story construct. And it's one of the reasons that I'm not a huge fan of ghost story construct, because in Western ghost story, generally the construct is, a place is being haunted and there's a spirit there and the spirit's angry and nobody knows why, and there's a thing to solve, and then you solve the thing because you find out that the ghost had was wronged in some way. They kind of, Western wise, they reveal it late, right? It's the answer is given in the third act.
Oh yeah.
As to why. And I think there's something that I just don't love about that, maybe just because it's a trope that's been done over and over and over again. I've seen it so many times that you're kind of like, okay, yeah, I get it. Like, the witch is mad because she got hung in the tree, and who gives a shit,
exactly.
Right? But in this, we're getting it at the front, and we got it in Jawan. We got it at the front, and so
it's
you
effective.
can let it go,
yeah,
and then you can just see the consequences.
Well, it's effective, and I think that's because it puts us automatically closer to the unknown aspects. You're like, because I mean that's what you want to do in a horror movie, is anything that we could possibly know, factual things, get it done up front or make us not care about it.
Yeah,
because then it's like, well, then you have nothing to hang your hat on, and that's what's scary.
Right. Yeah.
We already mentioned or talked about our moments of exclaiming and getting excited. Tim with the tongue grab, me with the little
puppet.
Yeah, the guy taking a few steps after he should be dead and
so
tongue hanging out. But that was noteworthy because I never sit up and
Yeah.
And exclaim. That I had to. That was incredible.
I felt like we finally hit our stride.
Yeah. It was interesting how this felt. How it was example of like it's body horror, but it's gore less. Like, oh, we didn't talk about we had like the scissors cutting hair and blood came out. That made me cringe.
Totally.
That was effective.
Yeah.
But there was just something interesting and noteworthy about, I think, that it was goreless horror, yet still
for the most part, yeah.
Body.
Yeah. I mean, there's some slashes here and there, but it's pretty, you're right, it's goreless.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, hair...
I'm fine with that. The hair was enough.
It's unique unto hair, I think, is why it's interesting.
Dude, hair coming out of things is so fucked up.
And not enough to make you bleed, though.
When they open her chest up in the autopsy in the first scene and a big fucking, like, wig of hair comes out, I'm like, fucking...
And just the chunks of hair on the tongue.
It's so, oh God, it's so gross. It's too much.
I thought it was noteworthy. I was absolutely tickled by the idea, knowing how, like, on films you shoot out a location first. Just the idea of imagining for like a week they were probably at this location of the hair fetishist's place. Like, we were excited about that location and the details into it. Something about that I just wanted to point out. That's a funny thought. That's a fun thought, knowing, if you've seen it, that they were just with this dude in this place covered with hair in this weird Christmas light lit place for like a week. All these people.
I have a couple little things that I just don't know what to think of, so I'm putting them here. It's really one thing, but it happens a few times with different characters. There's a couple characters that are just fucking kind of assholes. Like, the sister aside, like, we know she's an asshole, and she's harsh asshole, like, that, whew. But there are other people, like, one of the cops, at one point when they're sort of talking to the hair fetishist, because he's the coroner or whatever, right? Or he works in the morgue, and the hair fetishist sort of smiles about the body being gone or whatever, and the cop just, like, grabs him and slams him onto the table, like, super aggressively. I was like, Jesus Christ, like, calm down, everybody. It's not that big a deal. Like, how does that help us in any way? Like, what the fuck? And then the woman who's running the store, the hair salon is she's so cutthroat. Like,
Yeah.
like like
That
I don't know.
seemed
It
kind of
seems-
realistic, though. Her at least.
I thought it was
Like, you
it
better
seemed
get-
too much.
So-
Like I get where she's coming from, but holy shit!
I could
like,
see that happening in that situation of like her though. That I bought it when she was like, "You better get your personal orders,
Dude.
affairs in order."
She's compassionless. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell? Like, obviously some shit's going on and a kid is being dropped. Like, that's have a little bit of, I don't know. It just made me be like, man, you're harsh.
Well, it worked as good contrast to
Yeah.
to her Yuko's optimism.
Yeah, for sure.
In just more context in Sion Sono's work here. Love Exposure, the one I love so much, it's like shot on video and shot even more like even more frenetic, if you could believe it or not. It does not let up the pacing. Some of his other films I've seen that seem to have almost like a straight to video look to them too. So it was really cool seeing in this one the super like well lit, well shot bad guys enclave.
Yeah.
It just sort of showed me, it's like, oh, all that is just, it's just like it's just like he's using what's in his tool set. Like he's like, oh, he can do that when he wants. It's just that like, I just thought that was interesting that it wasn't any sort of, mark of, no, I don't know, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah.
There was I guess this probably could have gone in the things that worked, but like you're saying, there's a mostly kind of handheld stuff. There are like one or two shots in this that are really just lovely contrast to that. One of which is when mommy is inside Yuko's house and the sister is banging on the door outside, and it's this moment before she decides to open the door for her, which we all know she shouldn't.
That was heartbreaking. That
It's
scene.
a really great camera move. It's a low to high canted angle, and it pans and cants the other way as she crosses frame. So you get this very off kilter feel in this moment that's just, it's sort of one of those things where you just go, I'm in good hands, right? Like when a director takes this very particular moment of intense, story decision and says, I'm going to pause everything I've been doing stylistically and do this other thing that speaks really importantly to this moment from a camera perspective.
You know what, you're so right, because that moment really stood out to me as being effective of like just that gut-wrenchingness of like how horrible for like the mother figure to be, putting on her trust me voice and saying whatever
Right.
she can, and we know as soon as the door is unlocked,
Yeah.
it's gonna change. And it was just it brought the weight to that moment it needed, how it was shot. You're right.
I think it's a really good lesson in filmmaking that when you like pick a couple, at least one really, really important moment in your film, whatever it is, and change your style for that one moment is, I'm not saying do this all the time, but it's a good thing to think about.
Well, it's cool. It shows he's going like, all right, for this stuff, it's just getting the story that is in the lines, but this is when I do need to make this feel a certain way. I was looking at a review of this film, and they found this bit of info here that when asked at a recent screening or at a post-screening Q&A, when Sion Sono was asked, what do you think about modern J-horror and all the American remakes? He replied, I don't care.
My man.
And lastly, I have just two actors to point out. Hikari Mitsushima. She had a super bit part in this one. She was like one of the hairstylists. You like would barely catch her. She was like kind of what's like bundled up and punky and kind of like a punk haircut. She is the star of Love Exposure.
Oh.
So it was cool to see, like, I guess that's, it was I wasn't sure if this came out before or after when I was watching it. So I was like, oh, either this is where she was almost discovered or now she's being relegated to this role, one of the two. But this was right before Love Exposure. And if you're a fan of that, it's more as just pointing out because it was fun to see her even just in glimpses in this one because you love both the stars of that film by the end of it. And then the other little, our lead actor, Yuko. Did you recognize her?
I did, and I couldn't figure out from where.
She has that distinct nose.
I know. I knew her from something. I couldn't figure it out, but I know.
Well,
that.
yeah, just a few years earlier, she was Go-Go in Kill Bill Volume 1.
Yep. She also is a singer. Did you know that?
No.
Yep. She's got a couple albums and I don't know.
But it was neat because Go-Go and Kill Bill, I like recognized her as just being so just sort of like sinister. And...
Oh yeah, I mean this is stark contrast to that character.
So,
but actually, it makes sense that that's who you cast for Go-Go.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because aesthetically, you're thinking this, they're leaning on this schoolgirl thing, and then having her character be this fucking intensely crazy badass, right? So I think it's smart casting when you kind of take opposites. I mean, they're playing off of her girlishness, I guess, which is great too. But
she could do both really well,
yes,
though.
For sure.
And so I'm sure, and it feels like, I guess it seems like she's had a good career.
Yeah.
Deservingly so. All I had for things that were interesting or noteworthy, Tim Aslan.
That's it.
Yeah.
I think, see this movie for sure. There's a lot more. Well, I feel like we kind of are only scratching the surface in a lot of ways.
Still so much that happened.
Yeah.
Little moments within.
Yeah. It's good. Just, muscle through the lulls, I think is my advice.
As soon as you're feeling it, they'll de-lull though.
Yeah.
All right. Recommendations.
I guess for me right now, sort of a sad, I know we're backlogging these a little bit, but so this will have come and gone. But Stan Lee, the sort of Marvel Comics godfather, passed away yesterday, and it's a bummer for me because he was a big deal for me growing up, and I read all that stuff and like learned to draw, watching him and videos that he instructional videos that he put out. So I'd just say, go check out some old school Marvel comics,
Well, how about as a fan of his, and maybe for someone like me who doesn't know a lot about them, is there a specific work, appearance, or just interview, something?
I think, well, I mean, actually there is I think it's an interview that, or it's shit. He wrote some really important stuff on like equality and diversity and like civil rights. And I think that's what was one of the things that made him kind of so successful, is that most of his characters are people first and become superheroes. And that's sort of, a big tenet of the popularity of his characters.
Could you find like an article like that and put it in our show notes?
Yeah, I'll look this art because I saw it earlier. I'll look it up and we'll throw it in there.
Cool. On our website.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, he's a good dude. I'm sure that there are people he has his detractors, but by and large, I think he lived a really good life and helped change a lot of people's lives through his work. So that's commendable. So, bye, Stanley. Love you.
I was using October as an excuse to watch some horror films I'd been wanting to see but had never seen. And I'd been wanting, it would have been fun to watch these on our show, but I'm like, you know what? I just want to marathon them. I was curious to see the 3 Psycho sequels.
Oh, that's right.
Which I thought was just 2, but then there was one made in like the early 90s, like right before Anthony Perkins died, Psycho 4. It's great. So they all have Anthony Perkins in them.
That amazes me.
They all do something different with it, and I could go on about each one. I recommend, within this recommended, Cinemassacre's YouTube channel does a piece on the Psycho sequels. If you're just curious what they are, it's a good overview. But I enjoyed all of them. It did not taint the original for me, which is, of course, it stands head and shoulders above them.
Of course,
but like seeing Anthony Perkins and I just fell into the whole world. It was great. I enjoyed them. Psycho 2, 3, and 4 spelled Roman numerically.
Sweet.
And next week.
Yes. So next week, and are we gonna talk about we're gonna kind of change our methodology of how we choose the.
I think we're still about a month away from that, though.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then don't worry about it. Okay. So whoa, God bless it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm finally,
we're doing one more J-horror.
Yeah, one more J-horror, and like we have our list of everything we've done like up in front of us, and like there's way too many that start with the number 2. Way too many, I think, that were done in 2000 or later. This is my personal.
I get you.
This is my personal preference. When there's still that's the problem. There's still so much out there, and a lot of the times the stuff that's on our radar more is things that are going to be out more recently or in our lifetimes. So we are jumping back for this one to some OGJ. Jay. From 1964, neither of us have seen Onibaba, but it'll be interesting to see sort of to see the origins of sort of Japanese ghostiness.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how, or if at all, this may have influenced the other stuff we've watched. I'm sure it has.
Yeah, and it should be easier for you to track down than Exte hair extensions too, which we had to rent on DVD, which we are able to do thanks to being in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, you can find us at dismemberinghorror.com. I have my own portfolio website. That's my name, Ryan McDuffie, McDuffie.com, RyanMcDuffie.com.
Yeah. You can also Twitter us at dishorrorpod. And I have a Twitter and an Instagram. It's just my name, Tim Aslan.
Our Instagram is what we use more than our. We'll respond to you if anyone actually talked to us on our Twitter. But we post on our Instagram, which is not Dishorrorpod.
No, our Instagram is just Dismembering Horror.
Why is that? That's confusing.
Because Twitter has some rule about like your name, your handle can only be so many letters, and Dismembering Horror is more letters than they allowed.
Great, more reasons. Be on Instagram at Dismembering Horror there.
Yeah.
So until next week for Onibaba, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Be scared all the time.
Or not.
Oh, yeah.